So I changed up my presentation a little bit after David Anderson's talk this morning. Um, I'm not a very emotional person, but I was left with two emotions. One was a bit of depression, and one was a sense of real enthusiasm because I see a lot of potential. In 2016, our firm laid out a vision to transform itself from essentially a service-oriented firm into an ideas-based firm. We had kind of stalled as a firm, and we needed to improve our growth and our profitability. We're an old firm, but we decided that we needed to become lean in order to achieve our objective. So I'm going to talk to you about our experiences today, a little bit about what worked, some things that didn't work, and some things that we think we need to be doing going forward. And I'm going to try to mix in a little bit of what I heard about leadership this morning and yesterday, because as you're probably going to see during the presentation, that is a bit of our issue, and it's one reason why I have those two emotions going on right now. So this handsome young man founded our firm in 1920 in Lynchburg, Virginia. It was a sole architectural practice. Clark Nixon is an architecture, engineering, interiors firm. We've got about 400 people. We have offices basically from Georgia to Virginia, as you can see here, and the stars on the map. We do practice architecture, engineering, interior design, and we also have a small construction subsidiary to provide design, build, delivery to clients who would rather have their designer in charge than their contractor in charge. This is our vision. In 2016, we developed this vision for our firm. It was the tagline was Partner, Discover, Transform. But basically, we're going to together we're going to discover, inspire, and shape ideas that transform our world, which fits in well with what we're trying to do as a firm, which is essentially transform ourselves into a different kind of firm. And we begin with partnership. Great ideas come from collaboration. Our approach crosses disciplines to inspire innovation. Our process advances communities through discovery and design, and we believe ideas have the power to transform. See a lot of lean themes in these ideas, what we want to become as a firm. I want to tell you a little bit about our firm and the work that we do, because we are unique. There aren't many firms in our industry that are either lean, much less practicing Kanban. So we do building projects for a lot of different clients. DoD is one of our bigger clients. We do higher education work, probably our second largest market that we work in. We do K-12 schools. We do commercial development projects. We do work in the industrial sector and science and technology, mostly mineral processes and agricultural biotech. And then we also have this kind of a niche practice where we do firearms and public safety training facilities. We also do stuff that's pure engineering, transportation and infrastructure related stuff. You can see we climb on bridges to inspect them, and we do bridge design and engineering ourselves as well. We have transportation engineering. We design roads, and we do water, wastewater, and stormwater projects, and we also do geospatial information systems. So we do a lot of different stuff, which makes us a bit of a beast of an animal to try to transform. Our traditional approach to work, most of our projects start and the end is not well defined. Our clients usually have some idea of how much money they have and kind of what they want to do with it. So they might know they want to build a science building on a college campus, for example, and they have $50 million. And they might not even have any idea where it's going to go, how many people are going to go in there, sometimes not even what departments are going to be in that building. They have money and they sort of have a vision and a dream, and that's usually where a lot of our projects start. So we don't have a great end goal in mind usually when we get started. But we've usually committed to a fixed fee before we have done any more work than identifying that they have this much money and they want it delivered in this amount of time, and it's generally this kind of project. It's high risk. For the most part, our teams are structured in this way. The client is at the top. There's usually a principal in charge. There's a project manager, and then there's usually at least one lead in each of these disciplines. And that's just an example. If it was a transportation or civil engineering project, it would probably, you can replace most of those folks with the lead engineer. Our work is usually phased. We start with scope development and programming. Basically, that's beginning to mold the vision of what this client's looking for. Then we'll go into a schematic design phase. Usually our deliverable on that would be maybe a rough single-line floor plan, maybe some type of rendering for the project. Then we move into design development, which is further definition of it. At this point, the design is pretty well defined. We know what it's going to look like. We know pretty much what the size is going to be. We certainly know where it's going to be, and we have a better idea of what the cost is. This is also usually when we start hacking at a project because it's now more expensive. The scope is exploded during the course of design. The client's eyes are bigger than their stomach, so to speak, and so we usually have to start hacking stuff out of the project. And it causes a lot of rework and redesign, all of which we would call wasted effort. Then we proceed into construction documents. Our work is not constructible until the end of construction documents usually. And this is a typical kind of a phased project. Sometimes we'll do fast track work where we'll deliver certain packages earlier in the project so they can get under construction quicker. But generally that's where we are. Then we go into bidding phase, and then construction. And the percentages there are about how our fees are broken down on a typical project. This is what we get paid for doing this level of effort. And then we usually enter into some post-occupancy or post-construction phase, which usually ends up being free. We get calls about things not working well, somebody's not happy, and because we don't compete on price to get our work, we need happy clients in order to get future work. So we generally end up doing this stuff for free. There's typically a schedule with interdisciplinary coordination milestones. Our PM sets the scope, schedule, and budget, kind of the typical PMI, PMP sort of environment. Project planning tends to go with I need X number of Y types of people on my project. And that's the planning that usually goes into them. And they're usually just trying to reserve resources, reserve people, and it ends up leading to problems getting the work done within the budget that we have. And generally, in the past, we worked till we ran out of time. So people didn't have a good plan for the project. We just kept going and kept going and kept going until we ran out of time and had to deliver, and then we usually ended up continuing to work on it. So you can see why this would impact our profitability in our projects. If we can't finish it on time and we're just loading it up with people, sort of like reserving space to make sure that we can deliver. We kick off each phase of a project. Our team members have a deliverable due at the end of each phase. That's usually defining the conditions of satisfaction for what we're from the client's point of view. Even though we get the construction documents and we're finished with the project, we're finished, it's usually going to change during the course of construction. And this ends up being expedited work. It comes in, it needs to be turned around in a matter of days. It might be something we didn't have well coordinated. It might be something we left out of the documents. It might have been a mistake we made. It might have been something the client wants now in their building, now that they begin to see it taking shape. It might be a change in a code official's interpretation of something that we didn't anticipate, or they changed their mind once we got halfway into the job. So we do have different classes of service in our work. So our lean journey begins. We started with an architectural project. It was about a $50 million project on a higher education facility. It's a big job for us, a great opportunity, and we picked it because we thought it was one of our best opportunities to show a success. We could actually, we could make a big difference with this project. It had a good team, and so we felt like the stars were aligning well for us. And so we got that team started on the Kanban method. We also picked a couple of engineering departments. At that time, we weren't quite sure whether we were going to introduce Kanban on a project basis or introduce it on a departmental basis. So we sort of experimented with the two things. So we picked two departments. We picked the infrastructure group, civil engineering for the most part, and then we picked our transportation group, which incorporated our road designers and our bridge inspectors and our bridge designers. Our approach was to explain why. We went over the Kanban values, the principles, the practices, and the 3 agendas. Those principles are our principles, essentially. Those practices are our practice, at least our practice intentions. The values are our values. You saw our vision for our firm. So there's a lot of alignment there. The 3 agendas we've actually started talking about at our Lean Coach's suggestion, Hal Maycomber back there in the back, that we add a 4th agenda, which is taking care of the planet. Sustainability is a big deal for us in what we do. So this is a value that's core to the firm, and it's a value that's core to the practice. We introduced them to Stop Starting, Start Finishing. Everybody loves that book. It's quick to read. We usually get most people to read it before they show up for a training session. So that's why we like to use it. Our guys like to play games. They like to learn while doing stuff. So we play a lot of Kanban pizza, dot card game, a lot of different other techniques that we use from time to time, just kind of depending on the group, and sometimes depending on what I'm feeling in the days leading up to doing it. I'm not a person who likes to do things in routines most of the time. So if I did Kanban pizza with the last group, we're probably going to do dot card game with the next group. We modeled the work processes. We mapped out a basic Kanban board, and we talk a lot about explicit policies. This is something that is a bit foreign to folks, actually thinking about the flow of the work through their processes. Most of our folks are used to just diving in and going to work without a real good plan for working, and they're not used to having specific agreements among themselves about how they're going to work and what they're going to do. We're doing the daily meetings. We started out using Trello, and we have teams that are spread out amongst offices. The project that we started with had people in 3 offices working on it. Our transportation group has people in 5 offices working on it. So we Skype them in every morning. Those meetings started at about 30 minutes apiece, and now sometimes they're 2 minutes. People can zero in on what's important and get it done and move on with things. So after the first quarter, we reflected on what our experiences were. Let's see. The communication from the project point of view, the communication on design issues was enhanced. People were talking about the project and what needed to be done at a much higher rate. Getting together every day and focusing on the work had a great influence on that. But the board was really unwieldy, had a high volume of cards. The meetings in that team, I don't think they ever got below 20 minutes. they scrolled and scrolled and scrolled through those cards, and of course they lost track of them and they weren't prioritizing them very well. Most of our blocks were driven by the client because of late decisions or just failure to make a decision. The team chose not to include the client because we were learning about Kanban, and they didn't want to expose that we didn't know Kanban, that we were doing something for the first time, and they were really insecure about that. When we did a reflection of that team, as it was getting near the completion of the design work, that team actually wishes they had taken a different tack on that. That including the client would have exposed them to the impact that their behavior was having on them. So the engineering teams that we were working with, they had a heavy workload. They had limited staff. They needed to get more work done per day per team member. There aren't a lot of people in our industry to go hire out there of the quality that we're looking for. It's not unique to our firm. Most firms struggle with that. A lot of industries in the United States deal with that. So it's not like when the workload spikes by 20% that we can go out and just pick up 20% more people to get the work done. So we have to find a more efficient way to get things done. On those engineering teams, the flow of work definitely improved. The quality of the work improved. Our leads were kind of slow to adopt Kanban, and we learned that they didn't work plan very well. And in some cases, the leaders didn't engage initially on those teams, and therefore the momentum stalled. When Hal or I were engaged with the teams, we could push and guide and help them along, and we could keep the momentum going. But we needed to move on to work with other people. And when that leader involvement disappeared, or even in some cases was never even there, the folks who were trying to keep things going got frustrated. They couldn't keep that energy level going. We sagged a bit, and we had to address that. So our inspections group, they had flow issues. When we first started working them, it took them 6 weeks to turn around a report. So these are federally mandated inspections. They have to occur every 2 years or every year, depending on the condition of the bridge. The inspection has to occur in that month. The law requires that to happen, but there's no time limit on the report. So it was taking us 6 weeks to turn around a report after we did the inspection. Client was okay with that. We were not so okay with that because we didn't get paid for any of this until we turned in the report. So we had inspection effort, and we had report writing, and we had quality control checks, and we were financing all of that. So we really wanted to get that improved. And within 2 months, we saw that cycle time on those reports fall to 10 days. 10 days. That was a huge, huge, huge improvement. So we had seen some successes, but we clearly had some room for improvement. And so what we're we going to do with the next teams? So we had learned by that point that we were a firm that delivered work through departments to projects. We probably start 1,000 projects in the firm on an annual basis. There's no way we're going to have a daily meeting on every project every day. In some of our projects, the fees are, we might have 100 hours of effort in the project, and some we might have 100,000 hours of effort in the project. So we needed to sometimes treat those projects a little differently. The larger projects, maybe we would have stand-up meetings. Maybe they have their own boards. But we kept going with the departments. We felt like that was the proper way to go. So the approach for introducing it to people was largely unchanged. We changed up things a little bit based on the group. We'd started this process last February, in February 2017, and by August, about half of the firm had been introduced to Kanban and was actually practicing it. So they had boards, they had cards, they were moving cards, and they were having daily meetings. So we, after we'd introduced them and 6 months in, we did a little reflection. We needed to adjust our approach. A day and a half was too long to spend introducing this to the teams. We couldn't get people to commit to attend for a day and a half. That was a big problem. People wanted to spend more time learning while doing. They didn't want to sit there in the room and listen to me drone on for 2 hours and then take a break and then come back and listen to me drone on for another 2 hours. They wanted to play Kanban pizza. They wanted to have something that was more engaging. And we got better over time at teaching them the Kanban methods with those techniques. I'm learning this every day. I was learning it every day once we got started. So I got better as we went. We also put a little less emphasis on the Kanban values and principles and practices. It wasn't really, we weren't getting a lot of return on investment on the time we were spending with people. And it was much more effective if we dealt with those things in a weekly team session or even in the daily meetings and bringing them up there. So we introduced these things to them, but it was, we might have spent an hour total with each team talking about those things, whereas before we'd probably spend an entire half a day going through that with them. We spent more on working with the board, getting the board built, getting cards populated on the boards before we left that session. Because our experience with some of the other teams was we went through the introductory session and then everybody went away and then nobody put any cards on the board. And so we get back together in 2 weeks and there would be a lot of frustration from the people who were putting their cards on the board and were showing up to the daily meetings about the people that weren't putting cards on the board and weren't showing up at the daily meetings or were faking it. We had people that were putting cards on the board that encompassed about 3 weeks worth of work, right? Or more. So basically they were just documenting what they had always done and intended to continue to do. So that was something, that was an obstacle we definitely faced. Our sharing of work between offices with Trello was limited. We really couldn't share work between the boards very easily. There wasn't any real ability to link them. We needed some enterprise software. We were experiencing a change in practices. People were doing things differently. They were starting to plan their work more. We were beginning to see a little bit of a change in the culture of the organization, but it was spotty. Some offices were better than others. Some teams were better than others. We also built quality into our processes. Up until that time, when we would get to the end of a phase on a project, we would take the documents and package them up and send them off to a person in each discipline and do a quality control check. Schedules in our business are really aggressive. We don't have anywhere near as much time to get our work done as we did even a decade ago. Clients' expectations for delivery just get faster and faster and faster. And so we found ourselves not having enough time to do proper QC checks. And so errors were getting out into the field, which are not a good thing, both from a public's point of view and both from a firm's point of view. It hurts our reputation. It's definitely a liability issue, and we weren't happy with it. So we built quality into our processes. So it was we started planning our work, doing our work, checking our work, and then correcting our work. And what we found is that we were still doing those quality control checks at the end of each phase, but it didn't take any time at all to check them, and we weren't finding much. We were just dotting a few I's and and crossing a few T's. We weren't finding technical mistakes in the job. We still had some people who were thinking in this way, though. They wanted to just go back to the way it was. It's like, yeah, this was a fun exercise. I can guarantee you that after 6 months, there were people that we introduced Kanban to on the first day that were still hopeful that we were going to forget about this thing and go back to the way it was before. But we kept plugging through. There's a wide variation in adoption rates and the success. Some started really quickly and stalled. Some started slow and kept improving. Some started quickly and kept going, but we didn't really understand why. What was limiting our progress? What was causing this level of inconsistency? And then towards the end of last summer, I read this book by Amy Edmondson called Teaming, and obviously we work in teams on projects. So I didn't realize at the time that she was going to clue me into what was going on, and if I had had that copy of the Kanban maturity model, and I'd seen some of the presentations over the past day and a half, I wouldn't have had to read the book. I don't think I would have known. So she talks about the idea of execution-based firms and learning-based firms. And our vision clearly was to become a learning-based firm, but we were an execution-based firm. So what needed to change? So this is from her book. In the area of training, we tended to send people off to training sessions and then expect them to come back and have retain everything and be really good at it. We need to learn from doing. We saw this in our Kanban implementation sessions, is people wanted to learn in that way. Measuring performance, our folks tend to feel like the feedback they get is you didn't do it right, you made a mistake, you need to fix this. Instead of, did we learn something about what we just did? And part of that is because of our quality culture in the past. Is we check it at the end, and when it's wrong, it's a big deal. There's a lot of rework to be done. Sometimes we're just band-aiding things. And with respect to empowerment, we tended to advise people to go get permission to try new things. We tended to over-standardize, and we tended to under-explain why we had so many standards in place. So there was a procedure or a standard for many, many things, and as you guys probably all know, that's not helpful when you want to be a creative organization. But when we looked at the teams that were stalled or were struggling, the common thread was leader engagement. When we had high leader engagement, we were more successful than when we didn't. And so we adjusted our approach going forward to getting a much more in-depth focus on leader engagement. The rest of the teams, so we've done about half of the firm at this point. We've done pretty much the northeastern half of the firm, and so we took on the southwestern part of the firm. Different offices come entirely from what we had worked with before. In Roanoke and Asheville, pretty small offices. Office leadership engagement was high in those offices. Our Charlotte office is our third largest office. It's an A&E office. It has architects and engineers in it. Asheville is all architects. Roanoke has a mix of bridge inspectors and architects. So yeah, we have a lot of inconsistency from office to office. In our Macon, Georgia office, it's heavy engineering. We had maybe 4 architects in our Macon office. It's high MEP, mechanical, electrical and plumbing, and industrial. What we learned is that the 2 offices with the highest engagement were the most successful, and the ones that we didn't have much leader engagement there, they struggled with it. And and one of them in particular struggles with it today. Same thing, we just can't get the leader engagement at the level we want. So January rolls around and we reflected on our year. We had now introduced the Kanban method to every team in our entire firm, and which is a big accomplishment. But we still have a lot of work to do, and a lot to learn from that, and a lot of things to go back and maybe correct. We learned that the communication about our work got a lot better. People tended to before wait until project meetings to address issues, and now we're talking about it on a daily basis. Maybe they were actually talking about it between the daily meetings. We were building habits of communicating about stuff. People took advantage of the gatherings for those daily meetings, so we tried not to talk about those daily issues like that. Getting help was a lot easier for a lot of people. A lot of success to be proud of, but I'm going to have to speed up a little bit because I'm languishing. So we did improve our profit level. That was a good thing, as you would expect, because we stopped doing things we didn't need to be doing, and we'd had more attention on what people were working on. Our on-schedule delivery improved. So what can we do better? We have to start using our analytics. We're using Kanban now instead of Trello. It actually has great analytics. Trello's got none. So now we can identify what needs to improve and actually measure whether it is improving. We've got to get manager engagement and commitment. We're not going to get much farther if we don't attack that issue. We've got to get more lean leaders engaged in the firm. 400 people spread amongst all those offices, and I can't live out of a suitcase and get around everybody all the time. I have other things I've got to do too. So we need more people who are helping with that. We need to focus on delivery planning at the project level and also at the service level. So as you saw there, we have 3 leadership styles in the firm. We have command and control leaders. We have consensus leaders. We don't have too many consensus style leaders. Most of them are either command and control or they're collaborative. The command and control leaders, if they're engaged, their teams are doing really great at Kanban because they're ordering them to do it. The collaborative leaders, if they're engaged, it's also great Kanban, but people are doing because they want to do it. So back to Edmondson and the teaming. Our experience showed that we need to get our leaders operating in this learning frame. They've got to change their approach and how they lead. The command and control style of leadership is just not going to cut it for us going forward. Even though they can force people into doing the Kanban method, they're not doing it for the right reasons. And the adoption rate's higher when we have leaders in that style. A lean team is an execution as learning team, and our old teams were execution as efficiency. So if we can take this lean approach, it'll help us to do better, more creative work, and still deliver. Where we did have examples of execution as learning, we experienced constant small changes. The feedback loops were there. We were getting some people experimenting and focusing on continuous improvement. The level of leader engagement, again, tended to be higher in those groups who operated in that mode. So we're gonna use the Kanban cadences. We need to introduce operations review and strategy review to get our senior leadership or senior management involved in this. So right now they think that it's just for the rank and file guys. It's guys doing the daily meetings, the guys in the departments, and we need to get everybody else engaged in this. You guys have heard people talk about this for the last day and a half as to why we need to do this. So we need more lean leaders. We have this spectacular vision of our future. I took this the other day when I was on a hike. But we need others who can show people the way. Project managers are a group that needs a tremendous amount of focus. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but again, it's a lean approach. We haven't engaged our project managers at the level we need to engage them, and that's limiting us to a certain extent because those folks are our leaders. So we're going to have some project Kanban boards on our larger projects, and so the project manager needs to be focused on the work that should have started, the work that's late, and the work that has some dependency with work between maybe architecture and mechanical engineering or structural engineering and electrical engineering. So we need to get them that visibility. They want it, and Kanban is a great way to give it to them. And it helps them to do that traditional project management that they're accustomed to doing. We're doing some pull planning on some projects to help us build this project Kanban board. The structure of that board, as you can probably see there, we've got it into the weeks and the columns. That helps us to establish when work needs to be done. And so after that, we've climbed this mountain now, and where do we want to go? So right now we're thinking we need to do something on enterprise adopted improvements. I think that's a culture change initiative. I would hope maybe by the tail end of this year we can get something going on that. We need to identify what the market needs from the business. Help us to identify what knowledge is needed in the firm and what skills we need to get people. Where do we need to grow our people? And who knows? Our entire process has been learn and experiment as we go and figure out what's working well for us and what isn't. So thank you for your time, and I hope you found it informative.